Good morning, and on behalf of the Tulare County Department of Child Support Services, we thank you for joining us today to this virtual employer workshop. We are pleased to offer this workshop to you, our valued employer partner. Your partnership plays a vital role in the processing of the income withholding orders as well as the national medical support orders. We thank you and appreciate all that you do in delivering the financial withholdings to the many families we serve. My name is Laura Hernandez, and I am the Interim Public Information Officer. My role today would be to facilitate this presentation, provide you a brief overview of the department's services, and later on talk to you about the National Medical Support Notice. Please note, all participants have been placed on mute. If you happen to place this call on hold, we ask that you please put your phone volume down. This presentation is being recorded and it will be posted on the Tulare County Child Support YouTube channel. We recognize your time is very valuable and questions will be answered via the chat option. We will be creating a frequently asked questions list, which we will email you after the webinar. Finally, we value your opinion and ask that you complete the survey that will be mailed to you after the presentation. This survey will allow us to tailor future events to fit your specific needs. Today's agenda includes the income withholding order, the electronic income withholding order, or e-IWO, the National Medical Support Notice, relationship, employers, and California Child Support Services, payment options and remitting payments, your role in your employee's future, and finally, an open forum for your questions. During the workshop, you will hear from myself. I have been with the Department of Child Support for over 18 years and active in many department roles. You will hear from Fong Han, Attorney 3, an attorney with the Tulare County Child Support Department. He is a graduate of University of San Diego, has practiced law for the last 13 years, and has been with the department since 2014. You will also hear from Angela Jones, who has more than 11 years of child support program knowledge and experience. She has worked in a variety of child support functional areas, including enforcement, intergovernmental services, state contact center, parentage opportunity program, and employer services. Angela is currently the employer outreach coordinator for the employer services team at California Child Support Services. Our goal this morning is to provide you with the tools necessary to be successful when your office receives an income withholding order and a national medical support order. Here is our mission statement: enrich our community by partnering with parents to obtain accurate child support orders to assist families in meeting medical and financial needs. Our vision: educate and empower families with the knowledge and resources to promote the well-being of children. We serve all Tulare County residents, and we send income withholding orders as well as national medical support orders all over the United States. This is why you are a very important partner in ensuring the well-being of children. Here are some services we provide: locate non-custodial parents, establish paternity, establish and enforce child support and health insurance orders, collect and distribute child support and spousal support. Services that we do not offer are divorce, custody, visitation, and restraining orders. For those services that we do not provide, we recommend individuals with questions or concerns to contact our partner, the Family Law Facilitator, which is a free resource, and many of them can be located throughout California in different court agencies.
So when do child support agencies open a case? Well, when a child begins receiving public assistance, when a child's in foster care, when a party submits an application for services. If there's no current court case, the Child Support Department will establish a child support order. If there is an existing private law case, we will enforce that child support order. There are some child support orders that the custodial party has decided to enforce on their own and for which the child support department doesn't have a case open. In those cases, you may receive an income withholding order from a private individual instead of the child support department. So let's share a few statistics. In 2019, we had, this is all the information for 2019. We thought we would just want to make sure we share this information with you. Tulare County provides services to approximately 22,787 children. Wow. We collected over $40 million in child support last year. Of that amount, $32.2 million went directly to families. You may be wondering what happened to that difference. Well, about $8 million went to pay back the government for past assistance paid to families. Thanks to employers such as yourself, we collected over $28.9 million. Amazing. Thank you for your partnership. And now I will turn over the presentation to Attorney Fong Hong.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fong Hong, and I'll be discussing the income withholding order, which I'll refer to sometimes as the e-IWO. This presentation will generally be broken down into three major parts. 1, general principles regarding the e-IWO. 2, compliance timeframes regarding the e-IWO. And 3, additional responsibilities by you, the employer. I apologize. Thank you. Who is responsible, the employee or the employer? The employee is responsible to pay until the garnishment is in effect with the employer. The employer is responsible to deduct and remit the payment once served with the income withholding order. So although the non-custodial party is ultimately responsible to pay, you, the employer, also have an obligation to comply with the terms of the income withholding order. Next slide, please. So when do we get an income withholding order? Well, in general, an income withholding order is obtained in every case with a support order. It is effective and binding upon any existing or future employer of the parent. So one thing to note about this is that there may be instances where you, the employer, receive an e-IWO for an individual who is not currently working for you, but may work for you in the future. For example, if you have a person who works for you seasonally and you know they will return. In this instance, understand that the e-IWO you receive when the employee is not working for you is still valid because the person may return to work for you. In these scenarios, you can keep the e-IWO on file and comply with the e-IWO when your seasonal employee returns to work. So please keep that in mind. So a couple other general things. An e-IWO may be transferred by electronic means, and when it is issued by a court or administrative agency of another state, it is as binding to an employer as an order made by a California court. Okay. When do employers receive an income withholding order? Well, upon establishment of an order, when a non-custodial parent changes employment, when a new child support order is established for other children, when the court order is modified, when an arrears repayment is set, or when a child emancipates. So keep in mind a few things. Remember that you may receive an additional e-IWO for other child support orders stemming from different family units. In other words, your employee may have children with different families, leading to different and independent court orders. Also understand that when a child emancipates, that a revised e-IWO may be sent to you, not for current support, but for any outstanding past due child support. Next. What are the compliance timeframes for DCSS? In order for our department to be in compliance with state and federal timeframe requirements, we will serve an e-IWO on an existing employer within 15 days of entry of an order or as soon as an address is obtained for a new employer. Next slide, please. So what are the compliance timeframes for you as the employer? So within 10 calendar days of receiving a DCSS IWO, you must provide the employee with a copy of the IWO, a copy of the statement of the employee's rights to quash, modify, or stay service of the order, and a blank form with instructions for the employee to file for relief. So one thing to keep in mind is the request for hearing regarding earnings assignment, which you will receive with a copy of your IWO, will encompass the employee's rights to quash, which means to end or render void, and also provide instructions on how your employee can file for relief with the court. So please note that these documents are of extreme importance because it gives your employee the opportunity to seek legal relief from the IWO. Next slide, please. So what is the compliance timeframes for employers to withhold support? Well, an IWO is in effect no later than the first pay period, 10 days after receipt of an IWO. And you must deduct support from the employee's net disposable income, or NDI. And the deduction is not to exceed 50% of NDI. So I want to highlight 3 points here. First, when we refer to NDI, or net disposable income, understand that it means your employee's gross earnings minus any mandatory deductions. So like mandatory state and federal taxes, mandatory retirement, not voluntary retirement, and mandatory union dues. Second, this 50% net disposable income limitation applies across all of your employees' cases. And then finally, if your employee does in fact have multiple cases, you do not need to concern yourself about how the funds will be allocated to each case. The state disbursement unit will allocate the funds according to their internal allocation rules. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the compliance timeframes for employers to forward support? An employer needs to send payments within 7 business days of an employee being paid and continue to collect forward support until served with a notice modifying the amount to be withheld or terminating the order. I want to emphasize the importance of timely remitting payments here. In the event that you do not timely provide payments, it may lead to negative actions against your employee. So for example, if you inadvertently forget to remit payments on the last pay period of the month, the local child support agency may view your employee as out of compliance, since your employee's child support obligation was not paid in full. This in turn may lead to unfavorable consequences like submission of license suspension or contempt actions. So please be cognizant of the importance of remitting payments on time. Next slide, please. So aside from just deducting an employee's wages and submitting payments to the SDU, there are some other expectations for employers when working with DCSS. From time to time, as part of our process, you may receive requests for information about an employee, former or present, such as verification of employment, the employee's full name, last known address, date of birth, social security number, dates of employment, past and present earnings, and availability of health insurance coverage. This information will be used for a number of reasons, such as requesting wage information to properly determine a child support amount, verifying employment to serve a wage withholding order, or verifying the availability of medical support, which includes healthcare coverage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this type of information is usually requested on the Wage and Insurance Verification Form, DCSS 2030. It requests employee information to be used in establishing and enforcing support orders. It is signed under penalty of perjury by the employer, and it can be used as evidence in court. This document can be of great importance, especially in modification hearings before the court. For example, when a non-custodial party does not have current pay stubs, or when our system does not reveal any updated earnings, this document can be submitted to the court and used as a basis to update a guideline calculation without having the need to subpoena a representative from your office. Also, it can be used to verify cost and availability of health insurance for an employee, to verify cost to add children to the plan, and it allows the department to determine if the cost to add children is reasonable under the law, meaning that the department has the information to determine if the cost to add dependents to the plan exceeds 5% of your employee's monthly gross income. So in sum, the full completion and submission of this form makes modification hearings for both the department and the parties more efficient. It saves you money by saving your employee multiple court hearings due to inadequate earnings information. Next slide, please. So what are the employer's responsibility when employment ends? Your responsibility is to inform DCSS on or before the next payment due date of any new employer's information if known, the employee's last known residence address, and the employee's last known telephone number. There is a section in the e-IWO you can use to complete this information and return it to the local child support agency. Or there is also a form on the website under employer resources that you can print and return to DCSS. Next slide, please. Okay, so employers shall not do any of the following based on the existence of an e-IWO: refuse to hire, discriminate, discipline, or terminate an employee. And one thing to keep in mind is that employers who take these actions could face physical or civil penalties as a result of taking those actions. Next slide. Okay. Finally, this is an informational slide. We just wanted to let you know what the priority of withholdings when there are competing orders or liens. First and foremost is current child and family support. Secondly is current spousal support, then monthly health premiums and or medical support, child and or family support arrears, then finally spousal support arrears. As you may have an employee who has various support obligations other than just current child support, just be aware that the 50% net disposable income limitation on the withholding applies. And the state disbursement unit will also allocate the funds according to the hierarchy of the support, so you don't need to trouble yourself with trying to calculate it. So now I will be turning this presentation over to Angela Jones.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start off by saying thank you to all the employers that are joining this virtual employer workshop today. Over 70% of child support payments are received from income withholding orders from employers just like yourselves. So thank you very much for all that you do to make sure that children and families receive much needed support that they need. So this section, I'm going to go over the electronic income withholding order, commonly known as e-IWO. So for those of you that are already enrolled in the electronic income withholding order or e-IWO process, think about the benefits and how much time you have saved since enrolling. In previous workshops, employers have shared with me that the e-IWO process has made processing the income withholding orders so much easier. It has saved employers time and resources, and e-IWO has pushed them to become paperless in other areas of their company because it has streamlined the process. Next slide. So today I will go over how to register for e-IWO, as well as the options that are available. Then we'll take a look at the different acknowledgments that you'll receive when you start receiving those income withholding orders electronically. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you some resources that are available to help ease the process and some additional information. Next slide. So when you enroll in e-IWO, employers will be able to receive those income withholding orders electronically, as I stated before. You will also have the ability to notify the child support agency if your employee has been terminated or if your employee is going to be receiving a lump sum bonus, and I will show you how you can notify the child support agency of that. And then in addition to that, employers will also be able to acknowledge each of those income withholding orders or even reject that income withholding order. And there's several disposition codes that you can reject an income withholding order for. Next slide. So there are several benefits when you enroll in e-IWO. One of them is going to be, I'll probably mention this multiple times, but the income withholding order is going to be processed faster, and ultimately child support is going to get to that family sooner. As employers have already shared with me, it saves time, money, and resources. And then also, if you are an employer that receives income withholding orders from multiple states, because we know sometimes you could receive an income withholding order, for example, Texas as well as California, each of those electronic income withholding orders are going to have the same look and feel. That state is enrolled in sending out those income withholding orders electronically, and you have enrolled for that process. Each of those income withholding orders, or electronic income withholding orders, are going to have the same look and feel. So that is going to increase the accuracy and reliability of the data, and also there's no cost to employers when you enroll in the e-IWO process. Next slide. So on this slide, this is an example of what the profile registration form is going to look like. This is on the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. So when you accept this agreement, you're accepting to receive income withholding orders as well as child support notices electronically. If you are an employer that has multiple federal employer identification numbers, or FENs as we call them, please include a spreadsheet that includes each of those individual federal employer identification numbers. Next slide. So this diagram, there's a few diagrams in this presentation that are going to be very helpful for your IT personnel when you are ready to enroll in e-IWO. This slide 26 is one of them. So the diagram provided here, it illustrates the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement's electronic income withholding order, or e-IWO process. This is, as I said, it's extremely important for your IT personnel because this will show how that e-IWO is sent to the employer from the child support agency and then batched for each employer. Each batch is sent to each employer, and then you, the employer, you're able to respond utilizing the acknowledgments, and then those batches are sent back to the respective states. So once again, please share this diagram with your IT personnel. Next slide. So now, when you're ready to enroll in e-IWO, there are two different options that you can choose to implement. The first option is going to be the system-to-system interface. This option is the best option for employers that receive a high volume of income withholding orders. The second option is the no programming option. When enrolled in the no programming option, you'll receive a PDF of each of those income withholding orders daily. This option is going to be optimal for employers that receive a low volume of income withholding orders. But some of the benefits of the no programming option is that it is a simple implementation. Next slide. So for employers that are looking to have the system-to-system option, the estimated time to implement this option is 6 months of IT resources. I would mark slide 28 as another slide to show your IT personnel if you're interested in enrolling in the system-to-system option. It shows the different types of mapping that is required. You also will receive a PDF of each of those income withholding orders. But the main difference for this one, as I mentioned, is there's 5 to 6 months of IT resources that are required, but you as the employer will generate each of those acknowledgments daily, and those acknowledgments will be sent out in batches. Next slide. So the no programming option provides employers with two choices to meet their needs. So there's an option 1 and an option 2. So first I will go over the option 1. With the option 1 choice, you'll receive a PDF of each of those income withholding orders, but your acknowledgments that you receive daily will be received as a PDF. This is going to be good for if you're a larger size employer that has 600 plus employees. Next slide. So the second no programming option is going to be best suited for a small or medium-sized employers that have about 170 plus employees. This option will still allow you to receive a PDF of each of those income withholding orders daily, but the main difference is that the acknowledgement is going to be sent to you on an Excel spreadsheet. If you choose option 1 or option 2 within the no programming option, the estimated time for implementation is about 3 to 4 weeks. Next slide. So I mentioned that there's the option 1 and the option 2. Options under the no programming option. This first example is what the PDF acknowledgement will look like under the no programming option, option 1. Each of these PDF acknowledgements will include your employee's case identifier, that's in the top box here, your employee's, last name, first name, middle name, and your employee's social security number. It will also include your company's, your employer's, federal employer identification number or FIN. This will all be in the top box of the acknowledgement. In the income withholding disposition status, the employer will be able to accept or reject the income withholding order with the disposition reason code. And then one other thing I do want to point out, towards the bottom of this slide, there's a section that says corrected FIN. If you do receive an acknowledgement where your some numbers are transposed on your federal employer identification number, please provide the corrected federal employer identification number. This is very helpful for the child support agencies, and we can correct it in our system and make sure that your income withholding orders and your electronic income withholding orders are being received with the correct employer information on there. Next slide. So this is an example of the the Excel acknowledgement that you will receive with the no programming option, option 2. Same pieces of information will be included on this Excel acknowledgement, but as you notice, all of your employees for those PDF income withholding orders that you receive for that day are all going to be on one spreadsheet. Column K is where you will be able to select your disposition status code as well as your disposition reason code, and then you'll just save this file and you're done. Next slide. So I mentioned at the beginning of this section that there is an additional benefit for employers because if you enroll in e-IWO, you will be able to notify the child support agency if that employee is terminated or receiving a one-time lump sum bonus. This is the form that you will use. It's the employer-initiated acknowledgement. On this form, if your employee, as soon as you know that your employee is going to be receiving a lump sum or a bonus, you can check the box under the employer reporting and provide the lump sum date as well as the amount and the type of lump sum that your employee is going to be receiving. Under the employer reporting, in addition to that, you can also mark if your employee has been terminated. In the the notification of termination employment section, this is where you can provide the child support agency with some additional information, your employee's last known address, and also the new employer and the new employer's address if you have that information. This is going to be very helpful for the child support agency so they can send out an income withholding order to that new employer. Next slide. So the example here, this is the email that the child support agency receives daily. So each day we will know how many records were received, how many errors, and if there are errors, we will correct those and make sure that you get the correct electronic income withholding order in that following day's batch on your server. And then it will also let us know how many records were forwarded, and then also how many income withholding orders were rejected and how many batches were received. Next slide. So once you enroll in e-IWO, you will receive a daily email. Each employer will receive a daily email that looks similar to this one. So in this email, you can see how many income withholding orders you receive, how many of those income withholding orders are PDF orders, and then also how many acknowledgments. And if you are receiving PDF acknowledgments or Excel acknowledgments, there will be a numeral amount in each of those columns, depending on which one you are receiving. And then also if there are any errors and if you've rejected any electronic income withholding orders. Next slide. So this next slide, slide 36, next slide. This is another slide too, if you can mark it, highlight it. This is also going to be very helpful for your IT personnel when you enroll in the electronic income withholding order process. On this is going to, this states what type of server is going to be required, as well as the type of VPN and Adobe Reader that's required for you to start receiving those income withholding orders electronically. Next slide. So this section, I know we've covered quite a bit of information. So in the beginning, we went over the profile registration form that's on the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement. Just make sure that you fill out that form when you are enrolling in e-IWO and provide your Federal Employer Identification Number spreadsheet if you have multiple. The e-IWO team will practice connectivity to make sure test files are being received by your server. And if everything goes good, then you're ready to start receiving those electronic income withholding orders electronically. Next slide. So this is an e-IWO resource that provides helpful information regarding the e-IWO registration process that we discussed, as well as the options that are on the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement public website. There's additional information on the no programming option, as well as the system option. I do also want to point out the email that was sent to you when you signed up to register for this virtual employer workshop. There were some fact sheets that were provided to you. There is also an e-IWO fact sheet that has a summary of this program as well. And then also the e-IWO team contact information, as well as the link to this exact page on the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement's public website will be provided during the resources section that will be covered later in this presentation. So I just wanted to thank you, and actually now I will turn it back over to Laura Hernandez with Tulare County Department of Child Support Services.
Good morning again. My name is Laura Hernandez. And as you heard Ms. Angela earlier, there's a lot of information for you to be able to use. There's a lot of resources, and I just want to encourage you to take advantage of those resources to ensure that you know, the process is as smooth as it can be. So like with the income withholding order information, we're going to first cover some of the basic information you need to know in order to process these orders. And then we're going to look through the actual document. We're not going to look at the whole packet. We're just going to look at one part, very important part of the National Medical Support Notice. Next slide. So what is the legal obligation of the Department of Child Support Services? Well, we are to obtain and enforce orders against the non-custodial parent for health insurance coverage. We are to serve these orders we obtain on the non-custodial parent's employer. We are then to provide the custodial party with the health insurance information for the child, whether there is coverage or not. Next slide. So what is medical support? Well, medical support can be two things. Medical support can be a court-ordered, dependent health insurance coverage that normally requires the non-custodial parent to provide health insurance coverage, typically through an employer-sponsored health insurance plan. Two, medical support can also be a specific dollar amount to be used to pay for insurance or unreimbursed medical expenses. It's important to note that an employee parent can be subject to one or both of these medical support obligations. I know you're wondering, so what constitutes health insurance? Well, health insurance typically includes medical, dental, and vision. These insurances can be combined. It can be a single package or separate policies or plans. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So thank you. So what is the role in this process? Well, within 10 business days, provide a copy of the request a notice of hearing to your employee. Within 20 days, return Part A to the local child support agency, and within 20 business days, forward Part B to your plan administrator if applicable. Next slide. So what is a plan administrator's role? Well, within 40 days, complete the plan administrator response section of Part B and return that to the local child support agency. Add the children to the plan and notify the employer of any cost. Next slide. Employer's final steps. Notify the child support agency if coverage cost would exceed 50% of net disposable income, or begin deductions for the cost of the premium. Now, if insurance is already being provided, complete Section 1 and 3 of the Health Insurance Information Sheet located online and return it to the local child support agency. Next slide. So this is my favorite part, the National Medical Support Notice Document Review. Let's take a look at this document, Part A. I know it's really hard to believe because I myself get shocked sometimes that it looks like a thick packet. But you know, the NMSN, or National Medical Support Notice, is actually 4 documents. The rest are instructions. Let's look at some of those 4 documents. Part A is the notice to withhold for healthcare coverage, which usually is completed by the child support agency and then sent to you with the rest of the packet. Then 2, the employer response. This is your opportunity to respond to the request if one of the following situations exist. You do not provide healthcare coverage for your employees. The employee is not eligible for the healthcare coverage you provide. The employee has been terminated or has left employment. You cannot deduct for healthcare coverage because the state or federal withholding limits and the state's priority for withholding. Now, these limitations will be included in the instructions that accompany the National Medical Support Notice or that you have received from your state, as mentioned earlier. Now, Part B, which is another form, the Medical Support Notice to Administrator. This document should be forwarded to your healthcare plan provider, plan administrator provider for handling. Now, 4, Plan Administrator Response. This is completed by your plan administrator and returned to the child support agency. All of these forms are available online now. There are additional forms like the health insurance information form, the request of a notice of hearing regarding health insurance assignment, and instructions, all online. All of these forms, including any attachments, are available at the State of California Child Support Employer Resource Center, and they are, of course, locally on our local child support website in Tulare County. There is more information about which forms to provide to the non-custodial parent on the income withholding order and the National Medical Support cover sheet. If you have any questions, I encourage you to check our website, tularecounty.ca.gov, and also check out the state's website, Employer Resource Center, as well. Should you have any questions, definitely give us a call. We'd be happy to help you and answer any questions you may have. And now I will turn over the presentation back to Angela Jones. Next slide.
Thank you, Laura. I wanted to start this section, well, hello again. Thank you all for your important role that you play in sustaining the child support program. You are our critical partner, and I hope that this virtual employer workshop is providing you with a better understanding of your value to the child support program. Next slide. So I'm going to start this section with reporting new hires. So there is a large misconception that new hire reporting is voluntary. This is actually a mandatory process that is done through the Employment Development Department, also known as EDD. And all employers are required to report new hires as well as rehires within 20 days of their first day of work to the Employment Development Department. So we know what new hires are, but rehires, that is going to be an employee that you've hired and has left your business or terminated for at least 60 consecutive days and returns. So if you are an employer that, for example, has seasonal employees, you could potentially end up reporting an employee multiple times throughout the year. In addition to new hires and rehires, independent contractors do also have to be reported within 20 business days. So if you are required to file a Form 1099, or if you pay an independent contractor $600 or more, or if you even enter into a contract with an independent contractor for $600 or more, those individuals would still need to be reported to the Employment Development Department. And an independent contractor can be an individual or a sole proprietor. I do also want to share with you the new hire information that is reported to the Employment Development Department. It interfaces with our child support enforcement system. So, for example, if you are an employer that fails to report new hires, the California Child Support Services and Employment Development Department may not receive that new hire information for up to 120 days or even longer. So it's due to quarterly wage reporting. So what could end up happening is this could cause a delay in obtaining an income withholding order and ultimately getting money and payments to families and children. Next slide. So there are several benefits to the child support program when this information is reported to the Employment Development Department. It is matched against child support records to help locate parents. This information is also used to help establish orders, and it provides an up-to-date earnings record from the quarterly wage reporting. This allows for efficiency in the child support process. Next slide. So I'm going to refer back to that email that you received that had some pieces of information, some additional resources for you. In there was a DE-34, and that's the form that you're going to be using for reporting new employees and those rehires. There's also a DE-542, and that's the form that you will use to report the independent contractors. And there are 3 ways to report this information to the Employment Development Department. It can be reported to the document management group at the address provided here, or you can report that information utilizing the fax number on this slide. But you can also report this information electronically utilizing e-services for business online. It's very important that when you report this information to EDD, as I mentioned before, this information is received by our child support enforcement system, and California Child Support Services, as well as our local child support agencies, we utilize this information to communicate with employers. So I do want to point out, it's very important that this information is reported accurately and consistently each time you report your legal business name and your federal employer identification number, because this will ultimately help avoid receiving duplicate information from child support services. So I just wanted to point out there are some pieces of information that are required when reporting for your employees. So your employee's first name, middle initial, and last name, that employee's social security number and home address, as well as their start of work date. And then there are some significant pieces of information that needs to be reported for employers as well. Your California employer account number, also known as the SEAN, as well as your branch code, and this is a number that is assigned to you from the Employment Development Department. And then also your federal federal identification number, or FEAN, and your legal business name and address. I'm going to reiterate your federal employer identification number and legal business name are very important that it's reported consistently each time, because we don't want to, if it's reported, they've abbreviated with one reporting and then the complete legal business name is reported the next time, we could view that as maybe potentially 2 separate employers, and you could potentially get duplicate income withholding orders in the mail. Also make sure that you're providing a contact person and a phone number for your business. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier that you can report this information online. E-Services for Business is the easiest and fastest method for reporting your new hires. As an employer, E-Services for Business also provides you with some additional benefits. You can manage your employer payroll tax account. You can also register as an employer, file reports, pay your deposits and liabilities, and you can also make address changes. I do want to point out as a best practice, if you are going to be making an address change directly with the Employment Development Department, either utilizing the DE-34 or the DE-542 or reporting it online, just make sure that you're also reporting that information to California Child Support Services, and you can report that information electronically. And in the resource section, I will show you how you can report that, report your updated employer address electronically and some other pieces of information as well. And then also, EDD also provides tutorials on how to utilize E-Services for Business at the web address provided here. Next slide. So we've created the Employer Resource Center that is on California Child Support Services public website. This is where you can stay connected at the link provided here. And this page will also provide you with additional resources to help update your employer contact information that I mentioned. That actually is right here on the left-hand side in the Employer Quick Link section. It's the first hyperlink for update employer information. You can also access the National Medical Support Notice if you need to view that. There's a link for that as well. And then there's also a link where you can go directly to the Employment Development Department. And there's also information that's periodically updated to this page on employer outreach campaigns, and there's also a section on frequently asked questions. That is also periodically updated and questions added that are gathered from these employer workshops. One other thing I do want to mention that you can get on the Employer Resource Center, there is an employer update email subscription list. I would challenge each of you after this virtual employer workshop to go on there and subscribe, and periodically California Child Support Services will send out information on updates to program information or just very helpful resources that we want to share with you. Next slide. So we've also included some additional resources on topics that we've discussed today. So in addition to on the Employer Resource Center, the very first link in the Employer Quick Links to get to the section where you can electronically update your employer information. That information will go right over to California Child Support Services. I've also provided you the link that will take you directly there. In addition to that, there is the web address for E-Services for Business. If you are an employer that is not enrolled in e-IWO, but I hope that you do get enrolled in e-IWO after this presentation, you can report lump sums to the lump sum response team. Lump sums are bonuses, and you can do that by emailing the lump sum response team or just giving them a quick phone call and letting them know, hey, my employee is going to be receiving a bonus, and let them know the amount of the bonus, the date of the payout, and then also your contact information so they can contact you and let you know if you need to withhold a payment from that bonus. In addition to that, there's information on the debt inquiry service as well as e-term. E-term is another service, is also offered from the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement, where you can notify the child support agency that your employee has been terminated. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier there is the Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement's e-IWO team. On the top portion of this slide, I provided the web link that will take you directly to that e-IWO information that we covered in the e-IWO section, as well as the email address for the e-IWO team. So when you're ready to enroll, definitely send them an email. They will walk you through the whole process and let you know. You can let them know which option that you're interested in enrolling in, and they will definitely help you through that. So I've also included, the next section is SDU payments and the SDU payment, different types of payment options. And then also, I'm always happy to help. I provided my email address here on this slide. So if you have any questions related to employer services after the presentation, please do not hesitate to send me an email. And also, the Employer Services team is available for any questions or assistance needed. Next slide. So this next section is on the California State Disbursement Unit, or commonly known as the SDU. So each state, the SDU is a single location for processing and dispersing all incoming child support payments. So federal and state law mandates that all states have a single point for collections and disbursements. Next slide. So as an employer, there are some key responsibilities. One of the main ones is make sure that you are deducting the appropriate amount that is listed on that income withholding order, and also remit that payment to the State Disbursement Unit, or SDU, within 7 days of deduction. There's also some identifying pieces of information that need to be included with each of those payments, and this will ensure that the payment is allocated to the correct case and sent out to that children and family. And also forward the payments to the appropriate State Disbursement Unit. And I'm also going to go over selecting an electronic payment option and which options are available to you. Next slide. So when you select an electronic payment option, there is some additional benefits. There's going to be fewer errors. I know I mentioned this earlier. A child support payment is going to get to that family sooner, and the State Disbursement Unit is also going to be able to process that payment faster. It's going to save you as the employer time and money. Checks are not going to be lost in the mail, and you're not going to get calls from an employer, an employee maybe wondering, where their payment is, and it's also a green process. Next slide. So I wanted to go over this. If you are an employer that is making payments electronically to either the Franchise Tax Board, or FTB, or the Employment Development Department, or EDD, you are also required to send payments electronically utilizing electronic funds transfer to the State Disbursement Unit, or SDU. Next slide. So I wanted to go over some of the electronic payment options that you have available. The first one is Automated Clearinghouse, or ACH credit. This is similar to how you would make a direct deposit payment for your employee's payroll, to employer's payroll. So if you are interested in selecting the ACH credit option that will come directly from your bank account, definitely send an email to the electronic help desk, so that SDU has an electronic help desk at the email address provided here, or you can call them at 866-901-3212 and select option 1. Next slide. So the next electronic payment option is ACH debit or credit card payment. As of today, employers can still make these types of payments utilizing the SDU's website at the web address provided here. But I do want to let you know that changes will be coming July 20th of 2020, and employers will need to transition to making those payments utilizing a national pay site called Expert Pay at the web address provided here. You can go ahead and register for Expert Pay today, so you can start making your ACH debit and credit card payments utilizing Expert Pay. Next slide. So I wanted to provide the address for the State Disbursement Unit. I know we do have some out-of-state employers, so if you are an out-of-state employer, here is the address for the State Disbursement website, the State Disbursement Unit at the address provided here. I do want to just point out, employers, please do not send payments directly to the State Disbursement Unit, and we want to make sure that payments are being processed by the State Disbursement Unit. Please do not send payments directly to the local child support agency. We want to make sure that payments are being sent to the State Disbursement Unit, and also utilize one of the electronic payment options. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier that there are some pieces of information that need to be included with each of those payments. This is, like I said, this is going to ensure that the payment is allocated towards the case, and the payments don't go into suspense and require additional research to make sure they get allocated towards the correct case. So just make sure that with each of your payments that you're including the name as it appears on that income withholding order, your employee's social security number, the participant ID number, as well as the case or court order number, and the date of the payment, as well as the amount of the payment. If you ever have a question on, what information do I include on this payment when I send it over, please do not hesitate to contact the State Contact Center at 866-901-3212 to get directly to the State Disbursement Unit. That would be option 1, and that phone number is on slide 54. If you are a large employer that would like to send multiple income withholding order payments, those can be combined into one payment. Just make sure that you include the corresponding employee information for each of those, for how much needs to be allocated toward each of your employees' cases, or for each of your employees. Next slide. So now I'm actually going to turn it back over to Attorney Fong Han from Tulare County Child Support Services and Laura Hernandez.
So first and foremost, I want to thank you for participating in this webinar and for assisting your employees and their future in paying child support. Next slide, please. You can help your employee remain in compliance because compliance is determined by our automated child support case management system. Payments must be received timely and consistently per the court order for your employees to remain in compliance. Next slide, please. So what happens when there's non-compliance? It can have a negative impact on the employee's credit report. It can create bank levies and fees, license suspensions, or contempt charges. Next slide, please. But when your employee is in compliance, your employee will remain current on their credit report, have bank accounts in good standing, valid licenses. There will be no court appearances for non-payment of child support, and that means no time lost from work. But most importantly, that also means that the money gets to the children. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. Success. Thanks to employers like you, Tulare County collected over $28.9 million in income withholding orders during our 2018-2019 federal fiscal year. We could not have done this without you. Thank you for making sure families receive their court-ordered child support amount. Next slide. Here's some information so you can reach us. This is the information if you have any questions. Here's our phone number. This is the direct number to our employer line and our email. If you need assistance with any other child support agency or any other county, we definitely would be able to try to help you out and do the best we can to communicate that information. Earlier this week, I did have someone ask me about how do I contact specific agencies from different states, and I was able to provide them the information to the Federal Child Support Office and provide them the direct link so they can contact that specific state employer line. Next slide. Thank you for signing up today and being part of this webinar. And thank you all presenters, Fong Han, Angela Jones, behind the scenes, Jessica Vizcarra, our chat manager, and Juan Martinez, our chat manager. Thank you for being able to participate in this event. I will be able to mail you out additional information. If you'd like any of the information we just talked about, feel free to email me and I'll send that right out to you. This does conclude the presentation portion of this webinar, and we will open up the lines for some of your questions. Thank you again. Thank you for your time.